I won't hold my breath, and best of luck to them if one chooses to stand up. They are enjoying their lowest approval rating ever because this is who they are trying to represent. These far-left activists who don't stand for anything. They only stand against Donald Trump, and they hate, as you just heard from that one individual who wished death upon the president of the United States, they not just hate him, they hate the nearly 80 million Americans who elected to vote him.
Picture this. Daytime TV hums with the clink of coffee mugs and the sharp ring of smug laughter echoing off the sleek set of The View. A panel of media veterans toss around hot takes with polished flair, convinced their sharp words are just harmless entertainment. No strings, no consequences. Then out of nowhere, the game changes. Enter Karoline Leavitt, not with soundbite, but with an $800 million lawsuit. No social media spat. No clickbait scandal. This was a legal nuke, dropped squarely on one of TV's most iconic talk shows. Her claim? That The View crossed a line, veering from opinion into defamation, and not just a casual jab, but a full-blown character assassination hidden behind scripted smiles and daytime glitz. The courtroom wasn't having it. Judge and jury agreed. This wasn't spirited debate. It was a calculated smear. And for once, the cameras weren't in control. What unfolded tore into the heart of daytime TV bravado, exposing the danger of assuming fame equals immunity. The verdict shook the foundations of the show, sending a warning to every host who thinks a quick-witted insult comes without fallout. This wasn't just a win for Karoline. It was a wake-up call. So before we dive even deeper into what happened next, hint, it had Joe Rogan laughing so hard he nearly dropped his elk jerky. Hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you don't want to miss how this story twists from courtroom drama to media mayhem.
The episode of you when you were on The View, when you were running for president, you got introduced as our friend Donald Trump.
But does he really want to add President of the United States to his resume? A lot of people would like him to. Please let's find out, and please welcome my friend, Donald Trump.
That's right.
Whoopi Goldberg gives you a big hug and a kiss. Joy Behar gives you a big hug. Barbara Walters gives you a big hug. And then you actually started winning in the polls, and then the machine started working towards you.
That red hat that says "Make America Great Again," might as well just put a sticker on that.
Joe Rogan didn't just laugh. He launched a verbal blitz the moment news broke that The View lost the case. It wasn't a casual jab. It was a knockout punch, UFC style. Rogan tore into the show's host with razor-sharp wit, dismantling their arguments and mocking the entire production like it was a crumbling house made of wet cardboard. To Rogan, The View wasn't a talk show. It was group therapy gone off the rails, a chaotic stage where outrage screams over reason, and each host fights to out melodrama the next. He pointed out how their so-called debates often felt like a noisy chorus of outdated Wikipedia pages, read aloud by people who haven't fact-checked anything in over a decade. It was brutal, it was unfiltered, and it was hilarious. Rogan didn't hold back. And in doing so, he put a spotlight on what many have been thinking, but few dare to say out loud.
I get it. I also hate Joy Behar. So I don't love you, but I also hate that squawking bird. So I hate the whole thing. And frankly, that show, you want to talk about a show that set women back, is The View. You want to talk about that show. If the CIA is engineering, Antifa in the Capitol riot, some crazy misogynist engineered The View. Because there's nothing worse than The View. In terms of there are so many brilliant women out there. None of them are on The View. None of them have gone near the set of The View.
Rogan's critique cut deep, not just because it was brutal, but because it came from someone they had once tried to dismiss. The View had mocked him, laughed off his elk meat and DMT stories, and painted him as a fringe, tinfoil hat podcaster. But while they were busy sneering, Rogan was quietly building one of the most influential media empires on the planet. Now, with the lawsuit dragging The View into an unforgiving spotlight, the tables had flipped in a way no one expected. Rogan's takedown wasn't just funny, it was laser accurate. He didn't just roast them, he exposed a fragile foundation they were standing on. And when a mainstream TV giant gets outmaneuvered and humiliated by a podcaster they used to mock, it's more than ironic. It's a sign the system itself is starting to crack. And this was just the beginning.
Culture shift between right and left authoritarianism, and now people don't recognize that if you just stop looking at it in terms of red and blue, look at the actions, whether it's or suppression of free speech, pharmacological interventions that are mandatory, whatever it is. That used to all be associated with the authoritative right, the authoritarian right. And now those things are being embraced by the left. And I just think it's just an ideology thing. And I think we get confused and we think we're on the right side. We're on the right side. And if it's our side that's saying this, for sure that's the right thing to do. And no one's critically thinking about it.
What truly shattered the illusion was how The View built its brand on relentlessly mocking conservatives, especially Donald Trump, and branding anyone who disagreed as a threat to democracy. This wasn't subtle shade. They repeatedly pushed the idea that Trump was a modern-day villain. And no, that wasn't just a metaphor. They said it literally over and over. But here's the twist. Half the country wasn't buying it. And they didn't forget. Karoline Leavitt became one of their prime targets. They warped her image, exaggerated her views, and painted her as a cartoonish extremist. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she gathered receipts, real facts, real proof, and waited. Then she hit back. Her lawsuit wasn't just a clapback. It was a legal sledgehammer that rocked the media world. As The View kept pushing the narrative that Republicans were dangerous conspiracy theorists, it turned out they were the ones drowning in failed predictions, exaggerated claims, and hot takes that aged worse than milk left out in a heat wave. The mask slipped, and the fallout was unforgettable.
This is the most important part. This is right after she was saying, we are run by ABC News. You should trust us, not Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. So she by saying we should trust them because they're double-checked by ABC News, and then making the stupidest statement. Like, you didn't listen to what I said. Yeah. You didn't listen to what the wildlife biologist, and that's only a part of what he said.
Every time The View launched into another dramatic monologue, it was like they were digging their own grave with a diamond-studded shovel. What once felt like confident swagger started to look more like self-sabotage. And when the lawsuit hit, it was a slow-motion reality check. The smiles disappeared. The bravado cracked. Suddenly, the same voices that had preached with absolute certainty were scrambling for cover in full damage control mode. And that was just the beginning. When the verdict dropped, it wasn't just a legal blow. It was a cultural earthquake. The shock rippled through living rooms across America, where coffee mugs practically shattered mid-sip. The View didn't just lose a case, they got vaporized. This wasn't some passing social media scandal. It was an $800 million wrecking ball smashing into the glittering set of daytime TV. This wasn't just defamation. It was defamation with jazz hands, dressed up with studio applause, cue cards, and all the sparkle of a Vegas stage show. Karoline Leavitt's legal team didn't just win. They dismantled the entire performance. Every smug aside, every skewed soundbite, every headline-chasing hot take was stripped down, fact-checked, and torn apart in court. It was like watching a magic trick fall apart. Only the illusion was that The View ever had a grip on the truth. And the best part? Everyone finally saw it.
Is that show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in, you know, and they always bring on a token conservative woman and they yell over her and silence her, and, you know, they did that with Meghan McCain, and they did that with what is that other blonde woman from Survivor? Do you remember her, Jamie? She was always yelling. I mean, it's just, it's a bizarre show.
The very host who once handed out moral lectures like candy now stood stunned, blindsided that someone had finally pushed back. For years, they treated politics like a soap opera, where drama beat facts and the loudest voice ruled. But Karoline didn't yell. She came armed with cold, undeniable evidence. As The View crumbled under legal scrutiny, the internet lit up, Twitter exploded, memes flew in like confetti, turning the entire fiasco into a non-stop comedy roast. What was once smug certainty on daytime TV became the punchline of a nationwide joke, played on repeat across every screen.
I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press. You're asking me for what the president's justification is for these tariffs. It's not up to you. You're not the president, Gabe.
To hire a spokesperson just so that Elon Musk doesn't put out tweets that then confuse federal workers.
Are my press briefings not good enough for you, Jackie?
Clips of The View's most ridiculous moments started flooding the internet, now remixed with dramatic violin music and booming courtroom sound effects. This wasn't just a lawsuit, it was a cultural takedown, and The View was the main course on the chopping block. But here's where things got awkward. Long before Donald Trump became a political force, The View welcomed him with open arms. Whoopi Goldberg hugged him, Joy Behar beamed, and Barbara Walters even called him a friend. Back then, he was just our pal Donald. But the second he started climbing in the polls, everything changed. That red Make America Great Again had transformed him into their public enemy number one. What followed wasn't just political critique. It got personal. They mocked his supporters, ridiculed his every move, compared him to dictators, and accused him of everything short of the apocalypse. The hypocrisy? Impossible to ignore. And now it was all being replayed, frame by frame, for everyone to see.
You get people thinking, like, if you could stop Hitler by any means necessary, wouldn't you stop Hitler? And so they equate Donald Trump with Hitler and go, here you go, this is our modern Hitler. Do you see what Whoopi Goldberg said?
What'd she say?
Whoopi Goldberg said that Biden could arrest all the Republicans and put them in jail. You just need to see how unhinged this kind of thinking is. Well, you know what Joe Biden could do? Joe Biden, you have to see it because it's so
on TV.
crazy.
She said
on television.
But here's what The View didn't see coming. Tens of millions of Americans had stopped listening. They were tired of being talked down to, tired of being labeled, dismissed, and mocked. When the show started treating half the country like clueless, brainwashed fools, people noticed and remembered. Karoline Leavitt stood up for those voices. She wasn't a media celebrity or a household name, but she had something more powerful, the truth and the guts to take it to court. The View thought they could twist her words, distort her image, and bury the damage. But Karoline made sure they couldn't forget. She didn't just call them out, she held them accountable. And now, every time someone watches that old clip of Whoopi hugging Trump, it hits differently. It's not nostalgia, it's a reminder that beneath all the outrage and stage theatrics, The View was playing a game, and Karoline, she's the one who changed the rules.
You know, if you average out the View hosts, among the dumbest people on television. And so it's like they say the thing that people are thinking, but they say it very directly, so they expose whatever truth. But
I don't think some of them are dumb.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think Sunny Hostin's
You think it's deliberate?
I think she's ideologically driven, and they have blinders on, for sure. I don't think Sunny's dumb. But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say.
She didn't just challenge the game. Karoline Leavitt flipped the board and shattered it. At this point, The View wasn't just losing a lawsuit. They were losing control of the entire narrative. What once appeared as a polished, confident talk show now looked more like a chaotic mess of bad takes and strained performances. Joe Rogan didn't pull any punches either. He described the show as a rabies-infested henhouse, where facts were treated like furniture in a cat's path, knocked over just for fun of it. And honestly, it was hard to argue with the imagery. Day after day, The View dished out what they claimed was political commentary. But let's be real, it was more like emotional karaoke, loud, off-key, and desperately trying to follow a tune that wasn't there. The illusion was crumbling, and the country was finally watching it fall apart.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching and hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean, it is a rabies-infested henhouse.
And at the same time, it seemed like the most interesting part was their audience seemed to be on my side.
Yes.
And that's their audience.
Yes. Well, their audience is not really their audience. Their audience is a group of people they bring in to watch television shows.
One host would launch into a dramatic rant. The others would nod in synchronized agreement, and the audience would clap on cue, as if that somehow passed for real analysis. But when the spotlight shifted from the studio to the courtroom, the entire act unraveled. The drama couldn't save them. The applause couldn't protect them. And their smugness? It only made the crash harder to watch. Joe Rogan didn't just go after their content. He went straight for the foundation. He argued that if any show had damaged women's credibility in media, it was The View. Not because it was led by women, but because it represented the worst version of political discourse. Screaming matches, one-sided echo chambers, and cheap shots masquerading as insight. It looked like parody, except they were dead serious. With brilliant, informed women making real impact in politics and journalism, seeing The View positioned as the face of female commentary was, as Rogan put it, more embarrassing than empowering. His blunt verdict? None of those women belong on that set. And after everything that unfolded, it was a hard point to argue. But the real chaos hit when The View's legal nightmare turned into a full-blown media circus. This wasn't a stumble. It was a high-speed crash into a minefield. And they didn't just step on a landmine. They cartwheeled over it, wearing fireworks for shoes. Karoline Leavitt, once underestimated and mocked, had finally had enough, and she made sure they never forgot it.
You do know that you're walking into hostile territory, right?
Certainly do. And look, I think I'm well prepared for that. And I'm incredibly honored that President Trump has instilled confidence in me to speak on his behalf behind the White House podium. It's been an honor to have a front row seat to the greatest political comeback in history. And as you mentioned in your monologue, Sean, President Trump is putting together a brilliant cabinet of fantastic America First fighters, from Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who are going to cut the waste out of our federal bureaucracy, to Susie Wiles, who is going to serve as the first female chief of staff in history. Take that. Mark Cuban, to Tom Homan. No one better to secure the border than him.
Karoline Leavitt wasn't just fighting back against a few distorted sound bites. She was challenging an entire system that had long believed it could say whatever it wanted without consequences. The segments about her didn't merely twist the truth. They tortured it. Her name was dragged to the mud with exaggerated claims and lazy assumptions, all wrapped up in fake laughter and forced applause. It was an attack dressed in entertainment, a spectacle designed to humiliate and mislead. But when the courtroom lights came on, the illusion shattered. Every lie, every misleading statement was called out and dismantled piece by piece. The View's legal team was caught completely blindsided. It was like watching someone try to solve calculus problems with crayons. Karoline's lawyers came armed to the teeth with ironclad evidence, timelines, transcripts, and hard facts, while the View's defense looked like they just rolled out of bed, only to realize the cameras were still running. By the time the trial ended, the same women who had roasted others for years were now getting legally slow roasted themselves. Their hot takes turned cold, their once unshakable confidence crumbled into confusion. And there was Joe Rogan, standing back with a grin on his face, like a guy watching karma execute a perfect backflip. What had started as another day of TV gossip had transformed into the legal equivalent of an airstrike, and the View never saw it coming. Enter Joe Rogan again. This time, he wasn't just laughing. He was dissecting everything that made the View tick. Rogan didn't come with wild conspiracy theories or long-winded rants. He approached it with surgical precision, like a stand-up comic trained in psychological warfare. He broke down the show piece by piece, calling it what it truly was: a therapy session cloaked in studio lights, where outrage was staged, dissent was silenced, and every opinion had to follow the script or get cut off mid-sentence. He didn't just stop there. He pointed out how the View loved to bring in a token conservative, someone they could interrupt, talk over, or isolate. He reminded everyone of how they treated Meghan McCain, and even called back to another conservative woman from Survivor, a constant struggle just to be heard. What was happening wasn't debate. It was a setup, a rigged game of ideological volleyball where one team had a net and the other was forced to play with duct tape over their mouths. Then Rogan zoomed out. He connected the dots to something much bigger: how the modern left, ironically, had started embracing the very same tactics of authority and suppression that they accused the right of using. Mandatory policies, censorship, and a smug belief that whatever their side said was automatically right, simply because it was their side. Rogan wasn't just mocking the View anymore. He was turning it into a masterclass on how performance, not truth, had become the show's foundation. And once that act cracked under pressure, there was nothing real left underneath. Just noise, vanity, and years of toxic habits that had finally caught up. This wasn't just defamation. It was defamation on steroids, dressed up in sparkles, performed for clapping audiences who barely knew half the facts. Karoline Leavitt didn't just walk into that courtroom to settle a score. She dropped a legal nuke right on the View's front doorstep. When it exploded, the blast didn't just scorch. It obliterated egos and blew up their entire playbook. Every moment of the trial felt like a public dissection of the show's so-called credibility. The courtroom wasn't a place for opinion-based debate. It was a battle of evidence, and Karoline's team came loaded for bear, proving that the producers didn't just slip up, they actively dodged the truth, like kids ducking dodgeballs in gym class. But this wasn't a game. It was their reputation on the line. By the time closing arguments rolled around, the View's legal team looked like they'd aged 10 years overnight. The shiny, smug, performative punditry that had made them famous suddenly looked completely ridiculous when exposed to real legal scrutiny. And the audience? They were loving every second of it. The internet exploded with memes, remixing courtroom highlights with the View's wildest moments, layering them with sad violin tunes and explosive gavel sound effects. One post nailed it perfectly. She took their views and turned them into pay-per-view. The backlash wasn't just a loss in court. It was a public humiliation. The very things that the View had built its brand on, outrage, dismissiveness, and the smug confidence of never having to face consequences, had now unraveled, leaving them exposed, vulnerable, and completely out of their depth. Karoline Leavitt's lawsuit wasn't just a victory for her. It was a reminder to the entire media world that the truth still mattered, no matter how polished the presentation or how loud the applause.
First of all, the Democrat Party has gone woke, and now they have gone broke. They have their lowest approval ratings ever, and they are rallying around two of the most far-left leaders in their party, AOC and Jasmine Crockett. So that tells you the current state of the Democrat Party.
Joe Rogan wasn't just commenting on The View's downfall. He was hosting like a tour guide and museum of bad decisions. Every sharp one-liner, every savage hot take they'd ever thrown at others was now coming back, served cold, with a side of reality. The world watched as Rogan peeled back the layers of the show like an onion, embarrassing layer by embarrassing layer. He wasn't merely poking fun at them. He was exposing the rotten core of the heart of The View, a daily circus of fake outrage, stage applause, and pretend debates. He pointed out how their so-called discussions sounded more like Wikipedia pages being misread by wine moms nursing grudges. Honestly, after watching clips, it was hard to argue with him. The truth was out. The View wasn't fostering informed conversation. It was feeding the illusion of intelligence while dodging any real challenge to their ideas. Rogan exposed the entire format for what it was. A carefully crafted act designed to create enemies, villains they could shout at, mock, and dismiss without ever facing any pushback. And then there was Karoline Leavitt. She flipped the script entirely. Her legal victory didn't just chip away at their production budget. It torched their entire attitude. That smug air of superiority they carried every morning on live TV, gone, replaced by awkward silences, stiff on-air statements, and backstage chaos. The show that once threw judgment like confetti now found itself judged by the internet, by the public, and most importantly by the courts. Rogan, with his signature blend of biting sarcasm and sharp analysis, guided his audience through every detail, treating it like a tour of a spectacular media implosion. Every dumb comment, reckless take, and arrogant smirk replayed like bloopers from a bad sitcom that forgot it was live. This wasn't just a loss. It was a full-blown humiliation, and Rogan made sure the world didn't miss a second. Behind the cameras, The View started to unravel. Producers scrambled, legal consultants were reportedly brought in to vet every sentence before airtime. Imagine try to drop a fiery hot take with a lawyer breathing down your neck, saying, rephrase that or it's another 100 million. Sponsors fled, disappearing like daylight in a blackout. The cozy coffee brands and overpriced wellness products vanished, replaced by ads for foot fungus cream and discount cat food. A billboard screamed, your audience is drying up. Advertisers didn't just leave because of the lawsuit. They left because The View had become radioactive. No brand wanted their name beside a panel facing the public equivalent of a slapstick courtroom meltdown. And the audience? They began asking real questions. Wait, did they actually say that live on TV? How is this still called political commentary and not an over-the-top improv show with rage issues? Memes flooded social media. Karoline's face was slapped onto an Uno reverse card. The show's logo morphed into Court TV, Defamation Edition. Someone photoshopped the host onto a spinning wheel of misfortune, labeled with legal charges. It wasn't just backlash, it was full-on digital carnage. What had once been their comfort zone, sassy jokes and loud opinions, had turned into a legal booby trap. Now, every word they uttered came with a price tag. The game had changed, but The View was still stuck playing by the old rules. The most brutal blow wasn't the memes or the lost cash. It was the silence that followed. For a show built on nonstop chatter, The View suddenly went eerily quiet. No bold statements. No sassy comebacks, just an awkward stillness, as if the studio had forgotten how to breathe. These were the same women who had strutted like royalty on daytime TV, acting as the moral police of American politics. Now, they looked like defendants with nothing left to say. And it hit hard because this fall wasn't random. It was earned. Years of treating opinion like fact, swapping evidence for smugness, and tossing accusations like party favors had finally caught up with them. Karoline Leavitt didn't just walk into that courtroom with complaints. She came armed with proof. Timelines, context, receipts. She reminded everyone that no matter how glossy a show looks, lies wrapped in applause are still lies. Behind the scenes, the damage ran deep. Staff reportedly grew tense. Scripts went on lockdown. Every host had to second-guess themselves before speaking, because one wrong word could now cost millions. The power dynamic flipped overnight. For once, The View wasn't controlling the conversation. They were the conversation's target. This wasn't just Karoline's victory. It was a cultural reset, a loud message sent to the cameras and into every TV studio. Fame doesn't make you immune, and if you lie, someone will make you pay. The media world had been jolted awake, and the tremors were just beginning. And just when you thought the storm had passed, here came the knockout punch. The moment every TV producer in America sat up straight, because this wasn't just a View-esque problem anymore. Karoline's Uncracked opened a bigger question. How many other shows have been skating on thin legal ice? Overnight, Karoline's case became Exhibit A in every media lawsuit PowerPoint across the industry. Legal teams started asking themselves, wait, how many times did we call someone a fascist last year? Panic set in fast and furious. Meanwhile, the internet kept the roast going. Clips of The View's worst moments went viral again, this time paired with dramatic courtroom footage and gavel sound effects. Some posts were pure genius. One meme said, she took their views and made them pay-per-view. Another photoshopped the host into a courtroom game show, spinning a wheel labeled defamation lawsuit and public shame. And Joe Rogan? He kept firing off hits. Every sentence landed like a finishing move. He wasn't just mocking. He was documenting a spectacular downfall, comparing their spiral to a nature documentary about collapsing egos. At this point, that's exactly what it was. For years, The View had acted like their studio lights gave them superpowers. They believed that as long as they looked confident and shouted loud enough, they could say anything. But $800 million later, the truth was out. Their real worth wasn't measured in ratings or popularity. It was in credibility. Karoline didn't just win a case. She flipped the entire media landscape upside down. What made this meltdown so satisfying wasn't just the lawsuit or the chaos. It was that for once, someone stood up to the media machine and won. She didn't come chasing fame. Her mission was clear. Shut the door on the idea that big platforms can say whatever they want, destroy reputations, and walk away with a smug laugh in a studio audience. Karoline wasn't just swinging at The View. She took aim at every overpaid host who thought snark could replace substance. And it worked. Now, The View is officially a cautionary tale, landing right alongside fake tabloid headlines about Elvis eating pancakes with Bigfoot. Once you cross the line from opinion to slander, you don't get to hide behind camera lights anymore. Not anymore. Joe Rogan's take was simple. If your empire is built on gossip and smugness, it only takes one person with a lawyer to burn it all down. And he's absolutely right. You can only play untouchable for so long before someone comes back with facts, evidence, and a lawsuit that leaves your credibility in ashes. This case sparked something deeper. People are finally seeing through the polished nonsense. Platforms like Rogan's, love him or hate him, at least let opposing voices speak. Meanwhile, The View was just a one-sided performance pretending to be a discussion. Now that performance is over. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.